They're always never really ever looking at the camera. This movie's pretty good. You guys don't have this. You faked it for me. Thank you. I had to buy this from rarefilmsandmore.com. I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it. Some of the French stuff, no offense, gets a little too French. What's this?
Hey, salut tout le monde, c'est moi. Ah non, là on me voit pas. Je suis là. Voilà, non, pas ici. Là. Voilà, là, je suis là. Salut tout le monde, c'est moi, le DVD de Vidéo Club. C'est juste un petit message pour vous dire merci. Merci de suivre depuis si longtemps ce programme qui nous a permis de recevoir les plus grands réalisateurs et réalisatrices pour parler cinéma en toute simplicité. Et pour nous permettre de faire vivre Vidéo Club encore plus longtemps, nous sommes accompagnés de Pluto TV pour cet épisode. Pluto TV, c'est la plateforme gratuite de streaming qui regorge de classiques déjà cultes. Merci à eux, merci à vous et bon visionnage. Allez, je rentre dans mon rayon, moi. Voilà, je suis bien là. Un peu serré, mais bon. Non, mais ça va, ça va.
What is your relationship with DVDs, with physical edition and to video clubs where you can actually rent DVDs? Like, was it something that helps grow your cinephily?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I lived in a small town. My video store where I could rent stuff was not amazing, but it was the first place that I saw David Lynch movies, you know, that I was able to like see Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, you know, and Terry Gilliam movies, because a lot of stuff like that wouldn't play in the movie theaters where I lived. And then when I moved to New York at 17, Lincoln Center Performing Arts Library, I would rent anything that I'd ever heard of the title, heard of the director, heard of an actor, just like everything. And then when I moved to Brooklyn, there was Real Life and Videology, which were two video stores that I just spent a tremendous amount of time in and owed a lot of late fees to. And, you know, it was a magical time. I live in London now, and FOP is a great physical store, but I do miss the rentals. But I have a pretty large Blu-ray and DVD collection, and oftentimes I'm trying to get, you know, the nicest edition of something that's been restored. But sometimes just to see something, like I had to buy this from rarefilmsandmore.com just to see it, you know. And it's not a great transfer, and it doesn't look great, but it is the only way to see the film, you know. But I also, you know, watch films over and over again and study them, so it's good to have them on the shelf so that I can, I need to check that scene out. How did they do that? I need to remember, you know.
And that's something that you do quite a lot before actually writing or preparing a movie, like studying other movies?
Yeah. I mean, throughout, I mean, once we're in photography, I tend to watch stuff to chill out just right before I go to bed. Sometimes to stay marinated in the world, sometimes like I want to watch Seinfeld or like Terminator. But during writing and prep and through post-production, I'm usually watching a lot of films that have to do with what I'm working on.
So maybe we can talk to the movies that you want actually to talk about. There are some of you behind you. Mm-hmm. Which one we want to start with?
Well, I'll just start with this one since I picked it up already. So this is Andrzej, which is a early Parajanov movie, and it is takes place. It's like a Moldovan folktale. You know, this is a spoiler, I suppose, for Nosferatu, but it features, you know, an evil sorcerer with a phallic personality and a really large mustache. Parajanov's, you know, love of folk culture is something that, you know, I can really relate to, and his films are very inspiring because of how much he dives into the details of folk culture. Andrzej, if you can find it, watch it. I don't think I said I wanted to talk about Roundup. It's a great movie by Jancsó. I love Hungarian filmmaking. I love the staging. I love the camera work. This was inspiring for The Northman actually quite a bit. The way we dealt with the staging of a lot of the enslaved people was based on Jancsó because they're always never really ever looking at the camera. Part of that may have been protecting bad performances from non-actors, but and then it became a style. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe he just wanted to do it that way. But I think it makes these people who are not anonymous in a way that's very disturbing. Bergman's Cries and Whispers, classic. Probably my favorite Bergman movie. Very influential to The Witch and to Nosferatu. For me, also one of the best horror movies ever made, even though it's not, strictly speaking, a horror movie. But people know this movie, so I won't talk about it too much. I also didn't choose Come and See, but like one of the best movies ever made. Gotta watch it like twice a year.
Twice a year?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. This is an uneven movie. It is based on Dostoevsky's Humiliated and Insulted. This was something that I showed to some of the actors in Nosferatu. Dostoevsky does work with melodrama, and he works with very heightened emotions, and I love the tension, this Russian tension between being like very stoic and then very explosive. And I think that the acting style, like there's some people that are a little hammy, but there is some stuff that I really think it has some truthful expression of these heightened emotions. Natasha Kinski's like rolling her head against the wall, like in her angst in a way that I just believe it, even though it's kind of too much. There's also a really excellent child performance in this film that's very, very haunting. It's not all great, but it is super entertaining and super cool. So, The Eve of Ivan Kupalo. A Ukrainian movie by Dovzhenko, who is the cinematographer on Parajanov's Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. When you see in this film and other of Dovzhenko's work, you'll see how closely he is aligned with Parajanov stylistically. But this is like based around a Gogol story and of a sort of pagan celebration and a deal with the devil that goes wrong, as they always do. But it has some like truly memorable weird shots, weird edits, and a very haunting like final scene in a shrine. And it was inspiring to me for a couple of the moments with Orlok in Nosferatu, and also Robin Carolyn, the composer, was very inspired by this score. This is a cool movie. This is a really cool movie. You asked me to talk about The Favorite.
Because of an actor on this.
Because of Nicholas Hoult.
May I speak a moment, with Her Majesty's pleasure?
It's a great film. I love Yorgos. He's obviously like one of the great filmmakers working right now. I think it's a bit of a career-defining performance for Nicholas Hoult. It was like after this that his like level of specificity and beat by beat rigorousness in his acting, like it just kind of sort of changed. But he's also just like so funny.
Must the duck be here?
Nick has a terribly good sense of humor in real life. There's like a reunion between him and Hugh Grant, who's like also insanely funny. And, anyway, great job, Nicholas Hoult and everyone else in the cast of this movie. Zhuavsky's The Devil, another movie that I watch like twice a year. His wife, who plays the female lead, divorced him after the movie, and he was asked to leave Poland after making this movie, so it's got to be good. But yeah, I mean, it's very dark, it's very disturbing. I love Zhuavsky's Grotowski, like inspired, super intense, obsessed, possessed performances, obviously, and I find them deeply inspired. I mean, his camera work is really sloppy and not so much my style, but it is really frenetic and it is so energetic, and also it's fun. He doesn't have a lot of period stuff. There's the Blue Note. There's moments in the one that's based on Dostoevsky's Possession, The Possessed. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, but to see him work in that world, like he's great at it. You know, he's really great at it. Part of me wishes that he'd moved to London instead of Paris. Maybe he would have made more commercially successful films. Like, I know that could have been bad, but I think like some of the French stuff, no offense, gets a little too French.
So we can move on a little bit on this direction.
Queen of Spades.
She's unlucky. What's the matter? Are all of them unlucky for me tonight?
Thorold Dickinson is really awesome. This is one of the best looking like gothic horror movies. Like the horror is not super strong, but the atmosphere is so excellent. And there is a thing called a snow candle, which we used to be very common to make snow in movies. It's this like bucket that you light on fire and swing it around, and snow goes all over the place. That's usually like early, like Ridley Scott movies were always with that stuff. And they became outlawed just before we started to shoot Nosferatu. And I really didn't want to have to use CG snow. And there was a lot of conversation in the production office, like, you're going to have to use CG snow, just suck it up. And I'm like, not going to do it. And then I'm watching this again, and I was kind of drinking a little bourbon too, and like taking videos on my phone and sending it to like everybody, being like, look at all this great snow. It's not CG and it's not a snow candle. Like, let's do it like this. So we did potato flakes, which are like freeze-dried potatoes that you make like mashed potatoes out of in American Thanksgiving back in the day. And we bought all of the potato flake snow in Europe. And I think the snow in Nosferatu looks quite lovely, thanks to this movie. Archie Mayo's Svengali.
Bengali.
A lot of it kind of sucks. And there is like, something that I don't love about these American movies in the 30s is this like need for like lowbrow comedy. And it kind of just ruins the mood. You get like into some scary stuff and it's really exciting. And then there's just some like stupid schlocky comedy. And I don't get it. But I love John Barrymore's performance and his makeup. He has scenes with some of the first contact lenses in cinema where his eyes go white when he is telepathically calling out to Marion Marsh. And there is definitely like, in Marion Marsh's doll-like features, and the features of Svengali are not terribly different from how we designed Orlok in this film. So there is a similar kind of Death in the Maiden vibe that I found very inspiring. And also there's a shot in Nosferatu that's in the trailer where the shadow of Orlok's hand goes over the town of Visburg. That shot doesn't exist in here, but it is inspired by a scene in this movie. So it's cool.
I just picked one French picture
that
I've seen you mention in an interview.
Yeah. So this is awesome. Jean Grémion's The Lighthouse Keepers. Big influence on The Lighthouse.
This last 2 weeks, sir, I'd like it if you'd call me by my name.
The only scene that we kind of do is where the younger lighthouse keeper is mesmerized by the light. And, it was crazy because I had seen it in this film and wrote it and felt like, oh man, I'm like kind of just doing that scene. And then when Jaron Blaschke, my DP, and I like went to some lighthouses, it's really like that. It's kind of weird because it's like it's similar because it's a young and an old lighthouse keeper, and they like everything falls apart, isolation storm, but it also like rabies is involved. But it's really, really good. He's not super duper known, like not in America anyway, but he's rad.
Perfect.
Great director.
Maybe we can go to the young glow section over there.
Let's do it.
And let's go from the back.
Okay. Also, this movie's pretty good. I've seen it. I've seen it. And I've worked with Willem Dafoe a couple times. But yeah, these are all good movies, obviously.
And when you're working on this movie picture, did you felt like you had to watch them again, or
I-
you just focused on the first one?
I focused on the Murnau film. I watched the Herzog and the Coppola so many times as a kid, but I wanted to step away from them. But obviously their fingerprints are all over my movie, but that's fine. But I didn't want it to be even more than necessary. So I haven't watched them for 10 years.
Okay. So let's go from the back.
Okay, this is pretty fun. I hate to admit it. Okay. Oh, I didn't notice this. Conan the Barbarian.
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
Obviously, a big influence on the Northmen, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. Fun fact, Sam Conway, who did the practical effects in the film, his father did the practical effects in Conan the Barbarian. And so when Alexander Skarsgård takes the sword from the undead Viking and it collapses, his dad did the collapse effects of the keeper of the sword and the burial mound in Conan. How sick is that? Okay. Anya Taylor-Joy.
I am the Praetorian Furiosa!
I think Chris Hemsworth is really good in this. Like, I totally buy him as that guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines!
In the trailer, I was kind of like, what's Australian Fagin all about? But he's good. He's good. And Anya is really incredible, too. It's been a delight for me to see Anya's career blossom since working with her on The Witch.
Boo!
She's such a tremendous actress and a friend. Another movie that desperately, I mean, like, you guys don't have this. You faked it for me. Thank you. Why isn't this movie out there? We need a Blu-ray release. Like, you know, Criterion, somebody do this. But Philip Haas made this adaptation of Angels and Insects, and it is, like, one of my favorite period films. I mean, you know, it has the same kind of Merchant Ivory level of detail, but then there's these, like, I'm sure it's accurate, but these dresses that are, like, electrically bright colored that are so wild, and the score is incredible, and the score is, like, insidious. Ooh. And you don't know why until the film develops, and it's very surprising. All the performances are really cool, and it's a weird performance style where, like, everybody has a different performance style, but that performance style seems to encapsulate their character, and somehow it works. But love this movie. This should be one I watch 2 times a year, but I don't. Wild at Heart. David Lynch is one of my favorite directors, and this has obviously, like, a super memorable performance by Willem Dafoe as Bobby Peru.
Bobby Peru, just like the country.
I am just one of the luckiest people on planet Earth because Willem Dafoe likes working with me.
This is the last tear you will shed in weakness.
Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow! Nosferatu.
I offered him 2 roles in 2 other movies last week, and hopefully one of or both of them gets made. Love Willem Dafoe.
Do you recall the first time you met him before doing The Lighthouse?
I mean, it's like, it's an embarrassing story because he saw The Witch and reached out to me for a meeting, and I was kind of just shocked because he had always been such a massive acting hero of mine. And so we met in an Italian restaurant in Tribeca, and I also, like, at the time was excited for someone to pay for dinner. And or lunch, but yeah, and I just we, to my surprise, kind of got along. I mean, but that taught me a big lesson that, you know, if a movie star is acting like a movie star, I probably don't want to work with them. But if it seems like we could have been doing theater together when we were in high school, then it's a good match.
I might give someone else the word.
Well, this is interesting. This is Yellow Brick Road, which is a movie that a feature film that I did the costumes for. I always wanted to be a director when I grew up. I directed lots of plays and stuff in my teens and early 20s, But I made my living working in the art department or doing wardrobe all like through my 20s and early 30s before I made The Witch. And anytime I could do something that took place in the woods, I wanted to do it because I was writing The Witch and wanted to have like a lot of experience in the woods so that I would know how to make that movie. And this script came along and it was pretty interesting. The directors were really cool, and it was weirdly, I was living in New York at the time, but they shot this in New Hampshire, which is the state that I'm from. And you know, it was a cool experience overall, and it's a cool horror movie.
And so, do you think that those experiences have helped the way you could prepare The Witch?
Yeah, of course. You know, I mean, you're always learning. But yeah, I mean, by the time I shot The Witch, if I'm asking you to lay 60 feet of dolly track in the woods, like I know what that means, what it entails, and so on and so forth. It Chapter 2 is the movie that made me realize that Bill could be Orlok. It's not Pennywise, it's the scene where he plays, I mean, I don't know, like Pennywise as a man.
You haven't changed their futures.
And that moment, I was like, that's heavy, and I believe it. You know, like, I think this guy can play Orlok. So, thanks, Andy, for that.
I put this one because Lily-Rose Depp told us earlier that it's one of the movies that you asked her to watch before going on shooting Nosferatu.
Yeah. Why have you left your devotions? They were watching Father Grandier.
I also feel a kinship to Ken Russell because we're both reading books but don't have good taste. You know, like this movie, like the dialogue is insane, you know, but there's so much shit going on that you like don't like the first watch, you can't like follow how rich and detailed the dialogue is. And you know, I mean, obviously I gave Lily so many movies to watch, and and the fact that she said I told her to watch this, I'm kind of like, why? Like you get it already. Like, you know, you've seen like all these Złowski movies and all this other crazy shit. Like by this point, I think you understand that I'm looking for crazy shit. Thank you. This is a masterpiece. Perhaps the largest cinematic influence on my Nosferatu, aside from the Murnau film. Freddie Francis, the DP, his staging with Jack Clayton in this, and I can't remember if it's Room for the Top or View at the Top, but apologies, but it's just, that's the best for both of their careers, is working together. But I also love when Freddie Francis directs like a Hammer horror movie with a bad script. The staging is always so elegant, and I strive to have that kind of elegance in the movies that I make. Awesome movie by the Safdies.
Nick, what are you doing? We're in the middle of something here. We're in the middle of
get up. One thing that I do miss about New York, aside from seeing movies at 9 a.m. Easily, is there is a good film community of A24 filmmakers all live there, which was nice. But this film and The Lost City of Z were the movies that made me think that Rob could do The Lighthouse, as well as meeting him. We had lots of interesting meetings, and he's really fascinating and obviously like super incredibly talented actor, and I hope to do something with him in the future. Like many of us, this is the first film that I saw Lily-Rose Depp in. It's a small role, but if looks could kill. If looks could kill.
It would seem that you have no explanation for what you have done.
It's very powerful. On the basis of this and a couple other things, you know, I had a meeting with Lily, and she just impressed me so much. She understood the script so well. She had seen every major Dracula adaptation and a lot of more obscure ones. She immediately brought up our Polish friend Złowski, and I knew we were on the same page. But then we did an audition, a screen test, and it was just as raw and powerful as what she's doing on screen. I mean, you know, I was in literally, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, I was in tears because her audition was so insane, and she's just such a disciplined, courageous, and like feral actor. She's amazing. I haven't seen this movie, but it is lensed by Jaron Blaschke, my cinematographer.
There you go.
Everything of any merit that I've made with him. I made one short film before him that I shot. It's horrible. But, you know, Jaron and I have grown up together like as men, as fathers, you know, and as collaborators. And he's my brother from another mother. And I love working with him.
May I just had one picture? Would
Yeah.
you mind? Just one? Attention, there's one movie I wanted to talk about.
Maybe I don't know it.
You work with Chris Columbus.
Home Alone.
This one?
Of course.
Let's put it over there so you can
Find it.
Don't people feel like
I got it.
What's this? Home Alone.
Made my family disappear.
I also watch this once a year. Chris Columbus has been a mentor to me since The Witch. Seems weird, I know it, but he is incredible, and he was the main creative producer on Nosferatu, and he was such an advocate, and I think it was such a gift to have one of the masters of orthodox Hollywood storytelling be on set every single day. You know, Jaron Blaschke and I, like, we elaborately storyboard every single frame of the movies. We work with a storyboard artist, but we plan out all the shots, and Chris is combing through the storyboards, and he's saying, like, where's that beat? Where's this beat? It's in the script. I don't see it in the storyboard. It's not enough for the characters to say it. We have to see it visually. That's what you do. You know, and he wasn't trying to make a Chris Columbus movie. He was trying to, like, help me make the best Robert Eggers movie with the most clarity as possible. And I just couldn't have had a better, more inspiring collaboration with the producer than I had with Chris Columbus. And I also think that this is a masterpiece. It's a timeless movie. It is impeccably photographed, you know, unlike a lot of movies in this kind of genre. Like, it's not overshot. Like, it is a really well crafted film as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
Konbini.
Some of the French stuff, no offense, gets a little too French.